My name is Michelle Clayton. I'm an associate professor of Hispanic Studies and Comparative Literature at Brown, and I'll be using my semester at the Cogut to finish a book I've been working on for a number of years under the title Moving Bodies of the Avant-Garde. It's a project that looks at the underexplored place of dance in the first 3 decades of the 20th century, looking at dance's relationship to other art forms such as writing, painting, textiles, film, and architecture, and of course, other art forms' relationship to dance. The project started when I noticed how many writers and visual artists in the period were drawn to dance as muse or model for their own work, and how much dancers in turn were in conversations with experiments in other art forms at the same time that they were reading what was written about them, responding to artistic captures of their works, and incorporating or inserting their choreographies into broader debates about what modern art should be, what it should look like, how it should move, and how it should move its public. And this against a backdrop that stretches across Europe and the Americas, that entails various different regional as well as artistic languages, and in which I'm arguing dance functioned as a form of translation. The book tracks the emergence of new forms of dance in the newly emergent spaces of popular culture, such as world fairs, amusement parks, variety shows, and cinemas. It looks at their translation into artistic form by dancers, writers, and artists working together to explain the transfigured art form to a public. And it explores the responses of a variety of publics to what becomes a circulating art form, a kind of cultural commons to be reacted to and reworked. To give you a concrete example, in a chapter on Charlie Chaplin, I demonstrate first how Chaplin's radical new art was compared to dance by commentators and by Chaplin himself, who worked images of dance into many of his movies, sometimes as instances of grace, but sometimes paradoxically to illustrate the awkwardness of fellow feeling. From here, I move to show how Chaplin was being read by diverse publics across the West. As Peruvian theorist Jose Carlos Mariátegui wrote, he is enjoyed equally by bookworms and boxers alike. And once we compare the various readings of Chaplin put forth in intellectual, but also popular circles throughout the 1910s and 20s, it becomes clear that he was serving as a cultural touchstone for many publics to articulate their own version of modernity. Chaplin put his mutely eloquent moving body up for grabs, we might say, and with it everyone made their own cultural assemblage. This play with moving bodies becomes even more dynamic in the case of actual dancers. For most of the 19th century, dance had been associated with ethnography, with something to be visited in place, like the flamenco dance seen by numerous American and French visitors to Spain. But when it began to be incorporated into world's fairs and variety shows in the late 19th century, dancers started to design repertoires that offered experiences of travel in space, but also in time. On the one hand, they developed choreographies based on gestures seen in classical ceramics, friezes, and statuary, promising to restore grace to spasmodic modern bodies. But on the other hand, they presented themselves as mediums of foreign culture, sometimes claiming personal experience of other cultures, more often drawing upon book reports. The dancers thus styled themselves as animators of museums and libraries, offering vicarious forms of research travel. Something very curious happens when these bodies themselves begin to travel. During the First World War, when European theaters were shuttered, dancers embarked on looping tours of the Americas. And as they traveled around Latin America, performing exotic and often exoticizing repertoires, one after another became pulled into conversations with local intellectuals. And gradually, they turned from producing dances based on Greek and Roman sculpture to artistic experiments with pre-Columbian pasts, working with materials that were still in the process of excavation and interrogation by local intellectuals, entering into complex collaborations with artists, writers, musicians, and textile artists on the ground, all of whom were engaged in processes of animating, reanimating, and interanimating their national and regional pasts. I look forward to discussing these and other contact zones over the course of the semester with all of the fellows. Thank you very much.